number 3. Fire and blood.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
So I'm taking this topic, but I'm I'm gonna be upfront with you. I've had about 5 hours sleep in the past 48 hours, so bear with me.
I've literally one comment about it. 1 of 50 is I tried to read Fire and Blood last night, and I got to the first page and I fell asleep. It's so hard to read. It's like the first chapter of the Bible where it's like so and so begot so and so and so and so begot so and so, and that's all it is for the first chapter. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so hard to read.
Yeah. So if you don't know what she's talking about, Fire and Blood is George R.R. Martin's book on the Targaryens dynasty. Yeah. They're basically their family tree and their story. Excuse me.
Tight.
Okay. So obviously Game of Thrones was a huge success. I mean, no matter how you feel about the last couple seasons or whatever, it is undeniable that it did well. And
Says all of the merch ever sold.
yeah.
Bingo.
And yeah, so I mean, it's got the
Memo.
most Emmys won per show, the most Emmys won in a year. I mean, it's insane. It's critically and financially a success.
That show.
Yeah. So of course HBO wants more, right? I mean, why wouldn't they? But they're playing it smart. They're like, oh, we don't want to just rehash the same show in a different way. We don't want to do just a sequel like Arya's Sea Adventures or whatever, that kind of thing.
If that was the name of the title.
Yeah, I mean, we would totally watch that, but they don't want to do spinoffs with characters that have already been in that series because they want to leave that intact. Mm-hmm. They don't want to taint that. So they're being extremely careful. However, they also don't want to do just another show that is, like
About
I
the
said,
throne.
a rehash or just the same type of show in that world. It's like, oh, we're gonna recapture. No, they don't want to. They're not interested.
Which is
in
smart
doing that
because we
either.
don't care.
Yeah. So there were at least 5 scripts that they had commissioned for spinoffs or other, prequels or whatever, right?
I just imagine they're like sitting there and there's these 5 things out there and then they mold them together like the Fluke guy and it's like one giant monster. Like that's what they wanted to do.
That's
but somebody in the
typically what
room
they
was
do.
like, no, they're separate.
It's typically what studios do. But
Yeah, exactly. Like that's full on what I expected to happen.
studios are getting smarter nowadays where if they're figuring out if they make something that's a good story, it will do well and it will bring notoriety to their studio and more money and more fans and all other things good. Instead of just pumping out, well,
Example A,
Michael
Hustlers.
Bay.
Yeah. Okay.
So they've got, there was 5 commissioned. Last we heard, George R.R. Martin said 2 of them they've decided not to make, but 3 are progressing nicely. 1, they've already shot the pilot this summer. That's the one with Naomi Watts in the lead role. She's going to play a charismatic socialite hiding a dark secret. But this story is gonna cover basically the Age of Heroes, which is where the White Walkers first showed up, and Azor Ahai and all the legend stuff that we looked back on from the first series, all that, so it's leading up like the golden age of Westeros into its downfall, leading up to the Long Night. And so and there's technically not a name for it yet. Like the shooting name was I just lost it. It was like Blood Moon or something like that.
So many confusing things.
Yeah, I mean, they do shooting names that way. It's not like, oh, we're gonna go be a part of this. They're shooting over here. We know what it is. So they do like a different name, so people are like,
So it's like
But why would you do Blood Moon when whatever?
Yeah.
Maybe someone's a werewolf.
Maybe.
I'd be
Or a
down
witch.
for that. Yeah, let's do that. All right, Game of Thrones werewolves.
So George R. R. Martin has a blog, and he's pretty regular on it. And he's calling it the Long Night, and he even was like, HBO says I'm not supposed to call it the Long Night. The Long Night. But it's a long night.
Oh my
So
god.
he wants it to be called the Long Night.
But the other one.
Well, I'm getting into this one too. So yeah, so there's this one, the Long Night. Yeah, so yeah, the other one. Anyways, is basically, it's not completely greenlit yet, but there's people on the know, on the inside, and that kind of thing are saying that it's basically a done deal. And this one is going to be Fire. It's based off Fire and Blood, so it's like the story of the Targaryens and their rise from the doom of Valyria, like how they escaped. Because basically they were in Valyria, in old Valyria, they were basically nobodies. They weren't.
They were second to last on the totem pole.
Yeah.
There was one below them.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's like the first page of the book laid that out.
Oh, okay. So yeah, the way they escaped is like a cousin had a dream or something like that, and they were like, oh, okay, well, let's get out of here.
She ended up being called the Dreamer.
Yeah.
Oh.
And so they went and they settled on Dragonstone.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where they became like a house, an official house.
Go ahead. I can hold my hand up for a minute.
So then, of course, you get Aegon the Conqueror.
Well, so they go to Dragonstone and everybody's like, y'all stupid for going over there. And then like 12 weeks later, the rest of all of them die.
Mhm.
They all burn to death
Yeah.
and it falls. And so they're like,
Yeah, and they still don't really know what caused the Doom of Valyria yet. But
uh-huh.
Okay, can I do mine now? Okay. So, all right. With this one, I feel like it's gonna be where Game of Thrones was like low fantasy and dark. This one will probably be dark, but stupid high fantasy.
Yeah.
absolutely.
Like, and I'm really down for that.
Yeah, and they're like the Long Night one. There's no Targaryens. This is before the Targaryens came to Westeros. There's the First Men, so it's basically Starks, and there's not even like the Casterlys are still at Casterly Rock.
Oh, so
like there's no
that's still a
Lannisters.
thing.
There's this is way back when. This is like thousands of years.
Wow.
Fire
Okay.
and Blood, the book on the cover, it says 300 years before Game of Thrones, dragons ruled Westeros.
Yeah,
So it
and
says on the cover.
So there's a couple big instances in the Targaryen line. Like, of course, you got Aegon the Conqueror. You've got the Civil War, the Dance of Dragons, that basically almost tore the Targaryens apart. They were feuding and fighting over the kingdoms, and then you've got, of course, the Black Fires came out of that. You know, the bastard sons and this and that, and the rise so it's rumored that is going to, the Civil War is going to be the main focus. However, there's some speculation that it could also be an anthology.
Because that's how the books were published.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the book, Fire and Blood, is a 2-part book, but it's a compilation of short stories. And George R. R. Martin, before finishing part 2, released a lot of part 1's stories as anthologies. There's The Princess and the Queen, The Rogue Prince, The Sons of Dragon, and Conquest. He released all as anthologies that are their own stories.
Okay.
So I think that that's what they'll do.
Yeah, and that makes sense too, because you've got the
Extra
Targaryens over thousands of years, right?
Yeah.
And so it makes sense, like every season, take another age of the Targaryens, right?
It's time lapse. It's new characters. It keeps it fresh. I think that would be the smart thing to do.
And even though, like, I mean, there's a couple articles I saw as I was researching saying, oh, like they were going to make a show about his worst book, even though it was on the New York Times bestseller like twice, you know, and it left
It's
and
like
came
you're
back.
comparing something that is not comparable because it's like his best book made millions and billions of dollars, but then his worst book made millions of dollars.
It's like, how's your best book?
Yeah, exactly. Your worst book is sitting at your house. Okay. Then nobody buys, so I don't know why you like, oh, his worst book.
Yeah. So I mean, it seems like a really good premise. Whether the book worked for you or not, or it's hard to read, in theory, the show could be something completely different.
Yeah.
Or it just take on a new life, you know.
And the first little section of the book, it explains that like they do their timeline. Like the Maesters are trying to compile stories and things and keep records, but it's so spread out and so non-specific that they have before the conquest and after the conquest because there's no real definition of when it started or anything like that. It signifies that like the conquest was complete was when he got crowned and anointed specifically in Westeros, and so that's how they define it. And so the books volume 1 covers Aegon the Conqueror all the way to Aegon the Third, Dragonbane, and so part 2 is the rest of it.
Wow.
And so they've got a lot of source material to work with, whether you didn't like the book or not. There's so much there to work with that I think it would turn out to be a good show.
Yeah, and I know HBO, like even with the Game of Thrones series, they were pushing, and even George R.R. Martin was pushing for 10 seasons.
Yeah.
But D&D were like, oh, I can't do this. We gotta go do Star Wars.
Let me come do it. I'll do it.
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly. Let George R.R. Martin do it.
They should have handed it. I mean, they had several great directors that recurred and
Let the Duffer Brothers do it.
Duffer Brothers, no, thank you.
They're amazing. They can do anything they want to in the world.
Stranger Things.
Nobody said that they only have one style.
Okay. Anyways, like the director that did the big battles throughout in each season, each later season, like he could have taken over. Like, I mean, there were all the way from that to the Duffer Brothers, there are plenty eligible people who would have jumped at the opportunity to take over Game of Thrones, to even for the next 2 or 3 seasons to finish it out, or 5 seasons or whatever. And they just didn't want to let it go or whatever.
They wanted it to be theirs and only theirs. It's like, this is ours.
That was their throne. They were playing Cersei with the throne.
Aw, they were mad directors.
I just kind of forgot that.
But with Fire and Blood being an anthology, one thing that I don't care what they do in the show, I'll watch it, but like the last season or 2, they should be connected and they should be about the Mad King. Like that should be the end of it, and it like goes right into it, and it's like, all right, here we are.
Cool.
And then like it ends with, you know,
that would lend a lot of backstory to where Daenerys is coming from and her turn at the end
and burning everything.
Yeah, where she just clicks. And,
so yeah, I feel like if they do it in an anthology, that would be the best way to end it. Because I mean, in like season 7, season 6, we saw like flashes of like him going, burn the babies,
burn them all,
and everything. But I was like, I would like to see a whole hour of that, please, just because.
Yeah, and there's so much.
I mean,
there's so much source material they could go for several.
Saying it, but not an hour of me watching people burn. That'd be a little bit too much.
Yeah, that'd be kind of grim.
Quin's like, I'm here for it.
That's basically
it's
like
green fire, people.
Whatever episode that was of season 8. That was like, it was 10 minutes of them marching, and then the rest of the episode
and then
of
Jaime
Daenerys
jumps in the water that's infinitely deep.
Yeah. so yeah.
Or Bran knocks him in. But anyway, Bran. Anyway, Bran. Bran. So there's so much source material that they could literally go for like as many seasons as they want, and they could even go back and revisit things if they wanted to. because that would be cool. Like, say you do season 1 here, and then you go 5 seasons doing different things, but maybe people were fans like, oh, season 1, season 2, that was the best season. So you go back and you revisit for a season, and it's a revival season, and then you go on and do something else. That would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
Or you do like Marvel is doing, and you do what ifs.
Yeah.
You do whatever you want to do.
Yeah, you go back and play in between what's already come, like with Black Widow, where they're going back in time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Hey, George R. Martin, this is directly to you. Real quick, you should convince them to let the doom of Valeria be some sort of plot by one of the Targaryens that was actually mad. Like the first mad Targaryen.
Boom!
And like that's why Valeria was destroyed, because she saw the dream and then it was like, oh, they're all going to burn. I know why they're going to burn, because I did it. Yeah, do that. Please? Thank you.
It was actually her plot. It was like
We better leave, because I left a whole bunch of fire under there. So we better move.
Who's laughing now?
Take our dragons and get out of here.
Yeah.
Or it's like a secret plot where not only did she dream that they were going to demise and a bad guy was going to do it, but she also knew that years and years and years and later, Daenerys would go back to Dragonstone and find all of the dragon glass, and that's how she would defeat him. And it's this huge secret subplot.
Ooh.
Bum, bum.
The dreamer dreamed 1,000 years later.
Yeah.
I mean,
basically-
That's how
Raven.
prophecy works. You don't know
Yeah.
when it's going to happen.
Yeah. She's basically the childlike empress. She sees everything. And
I mean, the 3-eyed raven could see all throughout time, past, future, and present, so why not? I mean...
Yeah, why not make it the never-ending story thrown in there? I got what you were doing.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
I think it's going to be something to don't miss.
Yeah.
Whether you felt good about how Game of Thrones ended, I think it'll be worth a watch.
Yeah. So the Long Night series, we won't get at least until 2020, so next year, because they said that they're going to give a year to breathe from the last episode of Game of Thrones.
I mean, so did season 7 and season 8. So.
Yeah. For real.
I mean, it took a year just to breathe on that, so they might as well.
Yeah, and then they tripped out the gate.
Anyway, keep going.
So, yeah, I think that was all I had. I'm excited to see what they could do and what ideas they've got, especially the way they're trying to handle this and be smart about it and take their time and not rush into things.
Do we know any of the directors working on it, or is it some of the directors that worked on Game of Thrones? There were 19 directors.
I'm sure some of them come back for it. I know that Benioff and Weiss did stay on.
They're fired.
No,
Dang
they
it.
stayed on as executive producers.
Stupid.
Which is probably just in name only, because they've got whatever. They didn't want to be involved in anything else. I think they just got burnt out, to be honest with you.
It happens.
But you don't have to kill anything when you burn out.
They all do.
But the guy who the guy who directed and now his watch is ended, Alex Graves, I would have to say he did some of my favorite episodes. He did The Lion and the Rose, Breaker of Chains, The Mountain and the Viper, and The Children, which were some of I loved The Mountain and the Viper episode. I mean, I didn't like how it ended, obviously, but I thought it was done well. Like, the way it was shot and the way it told the story propelled it in a good way. So I'd love to see him on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Directing some episodes here and there. And...
It would be good. Oh.
And I know I'm trying to think of just different details that have come out about the new spinoffs. George R. Martin calls them successor series because he doesn't like the term spinoff.
I like that now. That's what I'm going to say for everything. Cool.
Successor series.
Yeah. How Game of Thrones of him. So one of the things that was a critique of Game of Thrones is that it was all mostly white people, and then you got a couple characters like Missandei who
got her head cut off.
Yeah, got her head cut off. You know, who was
Grey Worm who got his cut off.
Yeah, well, before we met him. So, yeah, now they're equal. They both got their heads cut off.
Okay.
No, he didn't. No, apparently he didn't. No, it was just the other thing.
Anyway. Bring it back here.
Not the stem, just the berries. Sorry.
I said bring it back here, and you kept going.
Sorry, I had to clarify.
They knew what you were talking about. No one was confused.
I'm sorry, I'm falling down the rabbit hole. Somebody help me.
I'm trying, Alice. I'm trying.
So that was one of the critiques about the show, is that it was predominantly white people. And yeah, I mean, you could say what you want about it being a European version of fantasy or whatever. I mean, literally Westeros is Europe upside down on the map. Did you know that? Yeah.
Quin's mind is blown right now. He literally was like, I need a map, so yeah, you got it.
Yeah.
Which I mean is not a bad idea.
Yeah.
It's pretty smart. It took people a while to figure it out. By a while, I mean like 2. How long has it been? No, I'm just kidding.
Today I learned.
I was today years old.
Yeah. So The Long Night, it is far enough back in time that it's not just going to cover Westeros. It's also going to go back to Valyria, and even though, of course, in Fire and Blood, Fire and Blood isn't its official name. It doesn't have an official name. They haven't even announced what I'm calling The Long Night, its official name either, because I think they're trying to like keep things down. Because I mean, like, Game of Thrones still just got a bunch of Emmy nominations for its last season, so it's still, relevant right now. So they're kind of like not wanting to steal the thunder from the original series right now. Mm-hmm. So this isn't the official name, but it's old enough, and they're going to explore other parts than just Westeros, and so there are all kinds of different other tribes and places to go in the world. And so there's going to be a lot more diversity. And if you look at the cast that's already been cast, there's a lot more diversity in the cast already.
It's not so much that there weren't characters in the show that were diverse characters. They weren't main characters. They weren't the people that we visited. They were with the people that we visited. Because you think about the Sand Snakes, they're pretty diverse, and like there were a couple thrown in there, but they weren't main characters. I think that's like the issue that I have with it. Yeah.
Plus, in the books, there was apparently a really good storyline with the Sand Snakes and Dorne that just was not even touched upon in the show.
There's a lot of stuff that wasn't touched upon in the books.
And there were a lot of things that weren't necessarily like accurate to the books, and like Daenerys' eye color and like all of these different things that I hope that they'll get a little bit closer to the books.
They actually she tried to wear the purple contacts, and they irritated her eyes so much. And so,
well, dang, I guess you better get a different actress.
Wow.
I don't understand why they didn't just CG her eyes.
Yeah, exactly.
With all this,
you got a dragon in there. A dragon.
They were just like, no, we like it this way.
That's too much money. I can't afford that.
I mean, like
every episode I'm supposed to turn our eyes purple on. What you want from me?
Well, I'm sure they'd have it figured out by then.
At that point, it's just a button. It's like
exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like,
because I know with the later X-Men movies with Mystique, not the Jennifer Lawrence ones, but Rebecca Romijn Stamos, or not Stamos anymore, Rebecca Romijn. I think I'm saying that right. But anyways, I want to say, like, after the first X-Men, she came back and she was a bigger character. Well, those big yellow contacts that she was having to wear irritated her eyes. And so she asked if they could CG it, and they did. Like, from there on out, it was all CG. And I doubt Jennifer Lawrence was wearing big yellow contacts, because she didn't even
want to wear makeup.
She didn't want the correct shade of blue on her in the last movie.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope they get a little bit closer to that, though, like book accuracy.
I mean, at this point, if it's in the same universe, would that be redoing it? I mean, would that mess with...
they could spin it super hard. They could spin it like, for whatever reason, it came off of like her mom's bloodline, like it didn't inherit over, because John, obviously his eyes weren't purple and his hair's not white,
right?
So they could just spin it like just because of who her mother was, or whatever.
Or they could straight up be like, oh well, when she was a baby, we didn't want her to be recognized easily as a Targaryen, so we hit her in the face and her eyes changed color. I don't know.
Or they had
there was a spell.
We poured acid on her eyes.
Yeah, or they had a red lady or one of the red priests come. It's like,
Yeah, there you go.
Well, she's cursed. Her eyes ain't supposed to be like that.
we have to hide our last 2 children, and they just turn their eyes like green.
Yeah,
There you go. That
there's
makes
so
sense.
many things that they could do.
Yeah,
So I
plot
hope
device.
that they don't use that as an excuse, because in my opinion, that's just an excuse to not take it back around. Like, oh well, it might do a disservice to the original Game of Thrones. It's like, no,
Be fine.
work it out. What's in that movie? Thank You for Smoking, where he's like, look, no, we could just drop a line in there where he's like, well, you can smoke in space.
Yeah, exactly. Wouldn't that blow up in an oxygen environment? It's like, well, you just say, well, thank God we invented that.
Yep, that's all you gotta do.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, I did forget this until you just said that, but originally in the pilot episode that they shot, it was a different Daenerys, and for whatever reason they swapped out because I don't know.
Her eyebrows weren't animated enough.
Wow.
Amelia Clark's eyebrows look like their own person. They're amazing.
I wish I could do that.
I wish they would just have a show and those are caterpillars on a kid's show, but it's just her eyebrows actually doing all of the acting.
It's a puppet, but it's just like painted over her. And she's like on the ground like,
Yep.
she would do it. Please.
She would. It's so awesome.
Oh my God. And then she breaks Karen. She's like,
I'm sorry.
She starts crying.
oh. Yep. I want royalties.
Yeah, I didn't know what we wanted until now.
Yeah. Blue's Clues going down. Emma's
Hungry caterpillar. Amelia Clark.
Amelia's eyebrows.
Yeah, I'm about it.
And the caterpillar's called Millie.
Like a millipede? I don't know. Did you know millipedes trot instead of walk? Have y'all seen that video?
No.
Oh
what?
my gosh, it's the cutest thing ever. It's a shadow of like a millipede like walking across the ground, and the millipede's moving like normal, but the shadow is coming perfectly. The shadow is like trot, 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 trot. And it's just the cutest thing ever. And now I'm not upset at millipedes anymore.
Yeah, after they bite you and whatnot.
Shh, shh. One
Sorry,
thing
don't
at a
ruin
time.
this for me.
I just got over this, okay?
All right, so I don't have anything else for that. And you guys have anything else?
Uh-huh.
I want to talk about it. I can't think of anything.
Wait, no, I have it. It's Valerian Steel. I would like for them to explain why it doesn't exist anymore and all that stuff.
Well, I know part of the creation process was forgotten, and there was, I know in the Game of Thrones timeline there was only like, I want to say like 2 forgers or blacksmiths who even knew how to reforge it, which was why it was such a big deal when he reforged ice and everything. So
one in King's Landing, the other in Winterfell. Yeah.
Huh.
Okay.
That would be like, that's a whole episode in and of itself right there. It's just like Valerian Steel. I got you.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like, it basically could be like a Discovery Channel for the Targaryens.
It's Jeff Goldblum and he doesn't know that it's all made up.
Okay.
I would pay money to see it. I would subscribe to only that channel if I had to.
The Jeff Goldblum channel. He's literally sitting on a stool going.
Oh my gosh.
All right.
Anything else?
That's it. That's all.
That's it. All right.